Hey guys, welcome back. So for this one, we're going to be diving into Thor Annual number 1, which starts with a quick yet really good self-contained story that also manages to fall in line with the events that we've seen so far in Thor Volume 6. And with that being said, let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so heading into this annual issue, this story is very much continuing the narrative that we've seen so far in Thor Volume 6. Because if you guys remember, at the end of Blood of the Fathers, when we saw Odin's spirit finally make his way to Valhalla, this was done in a way where not only was it showing us the end of an era, with Odin truly passing, but on top of that, we were getting a lot of emphasis on the idea of us moving into the new age with Thor Odinson as the Allfather. And I really like how in this annual issue, we jump right in with that same energy, because this begins with Sif looking at the shattered Bifrost, which is still wrecked from the events of Banner of War, when Thor became a Hulk and he smashed it. But looking at it alone shouldn't cause Sif's eyes to bleed, but instead she sees the fragments of the Rainbow Bridge assembling into a structure, which causes the 10 realms to scream and Sif's eyes to bleed. So right away, King Thor makes his way to investigate, so he can find out how this is happening. And with Sif being the first person to see this before being placed in excruciating pain, she was only able to get out one word of warning to tell Thor, and that word was Mythos. So Thor takes off with Mjolnir while only being guided by instinct, since he doesn't know what exactly it is that Sif saw, but whatever it is, it's a power that's capable of changing the very rings of the World Tree, as well as gathering the pieces of the Bifrost and welding them into an engine of conquest. And as Thor journeys into this mystery, he goes without allies, darkness rejoices, and the dead are already making room for him to join them. But not long after this, we find that Thor's journey, his instincts, led him to Midgard, the realm of Avengers, because if anyone could withstand the power of Mythos, it would have to be them. So when he arrives, he listens for Jane, he listens for Runa, for the Avengers, or any of the heroes, only for Thor to hear nothing, with him describing the silence like that of the battlefield, after the Valkyries are gone, with the hero's absence being a fatal wound, and Midgard being a golden corpse, as Thor looks into the distance and he sees the missing shards of the Bifrost assembled into this huge structure towering over the city. And with them seeing it guarded by what looks to be a fleet of destroyers, Thor quickly heads in to take them down and stop this nonsense at once, while demanding whoever's in charge here to show themselves and face the Allfather. And soon after, he's confronted by a towering figure who tells him that it stands before him with no deception, with it claiming to be the master of Yggdrasil, the tyrant of humanity, the omnipotent savior, which are all words that come together to form the acronym Mythos, because acronyms are kind of M.O.T.H.O.S thing. But now with seeing M.O.T.H.O.S here, all Thor knows is that M.O.T.H.O.S has taken the shards of the Bifrost and he's whipped up some absurd trickery, starting with him having a head that's nearly proportionate to his body. But nonetheless, with Mythos revealing himself and Thor realizing that this is M.O.T.H.O.S who's behind all of this, initially it kinda has Thor like, okay, I know this guy, but he really has no clue how exactly M.O.T.H.O.S pulled this trickery off. So of course, like many villains, M.O.T.H.O.S doesn't mind spilling the tea, and he tells Thor that this is no trick. It's just ingenuity, because all he did was take advantage of the broken Rainbow Bridge, which as M.O.T.H.O.S would describe, it's no different than an Einstein-Rosen bridge. So he used every resource at his disposal to collect the pieces so that with precision and care, he could master them. And with the full power of the World Tree at his disposal, he banished freedom. He transported away the memory of heroes into darkness and made the realms his own, which is something that he believes that he deserves, and not Thor, the rightful king of Asgard. But as far as King Thor is concerned, the only rightful thing that Mythos deserves is annihilation. And with Thor saying this, he takes his attack straight to the forehead of Mythos, only to find that his attack is delivering no damage. And as you would expect, this is raising some concern for Thor, but as he hovers there speechless, Mythos hits him with a Bifrost blast that sends pain through every inch of Thor's body, with the very fabric of the Bifrost tearing him apart piece by piece. And as Thor plummets down to the ground, he can't help but to hear his father's voice, which now is more of a thing of him imagining what his father would say, as opposed to what it was recently with Odin actually being in the hammer, because he's in Valhalla now, he's gone. But Thor can't help but to think of his father saying one word in this moment, with that one word being retreat. because Odin wasn't one to fight a battle that he didn't know that he could win. So Thor walks away, telling himself that it's wisdom to head into the shadows and not the act of a coward. And even though it's a noble decision, he can't help but to walk away with doubt. And then not too far away, Thor finds a young man protecting a couple of people from some thug with a knife, and without warning, Thor just appears on this guy, like an old school Spawn issue. Cause you know how Spawn would show up with those green eyes glowing and say something like, "I'm sending you to Malboja." Thor pretty much does that, and this guy goes running. And it isn't long before you find out that this young man that Thor had found is actually a someone that he had been looking for, with this someone being Peter Parker. And we're more or less told that Peter is one of Sif's favorites, and that one way or another kind of gave Thor an idea of where to find him. But as it stands, Peter isn't Spider-Man, and he doesn't recall any of the history of any of the heroes, much like everyone else. But with Peter still being someone who tries to help, he invites Thor to his humble dystopian abode, which isn't in Queens cause that's the Inferno sector, and nothing's lived out there for years, which just goes to show that Mythos has changed the history as far as what everyone here recalls. So Peter ends up giving him a crash course since he understands that this Thor guy is pretty new to all this. So he tells Thor that this is City Prime, and first you have your pleb people like himself who work and live and wait in lines, and occasionally they get smacked around by people like the thug in the alley earlier. And not so much from the Golden Guard, who stay closer to the palace, which is also a place where people who are in Peter's position desire to be. And many of them have the opportunity to ascend to being palace people, which is still like servitude in a better place, though still not great. And it's crazy seeing Peter here explain this to Thor, because while he's saying this and looking out at the palace, he's just thinking of how nice it could be if he had the opportunity to ascend, live, and work there. And with seeing this contrast between who Peter is and who Thor knows him to be, Thor asks him why. Why did he protect those people in the alley? And Peter tells him it's hard to watch people suffer when you can do something about it, even if that something is just taking a punch. And he knows that he's just one guy, but he feels like he has the responsibility to make the effort. And when Thor asks him, even in failure, Peter tells him, especially in failure, because the battles you can't win are the most important to fight. Which right there, that's what Thor came looking for. And before he leaves, he lets Peter know that he's not going to remember this conversation next time they meet, but he's earned a visit to the hot springs of heaven. And even though Peter won't remember this, I really hope that he has a feeling that Thor owes him something. Like, you know, like his spider sense is tingling, like, man, you owe me some money. Fingers crossed, some point in the future we get that. So from here, Thor makes his way back to Mythos to continue this fight where his victory is not guaranteed. And with Peter telling him that the battles you can't win are the most important to fight, Thor just thinks about how his father wouldn't understand that. And he goes on to say that the power of the Allfather may be stolen, the throne of the gods may be usurped, even the world tree has been seized by foul hands. But Thor's belief in itself, that power is his, and his alone. And it's really something that just harkens back to the uncertainty that Thor's experienced since becoming king and not being sure if he's good enough or if he'll even do a decent job stepping in after his father. So now with him being tested by going against the power that belongs to Asgard, it's up to Thor to face this by himself with no one at his side, which really makes this fight that sends Thor throughout the different realms an integrity check more than anything else. And against Mythos, Thor finds that he has the power to keep standing, the power to keep fighting, the power of his heart, which as it turns out is a power that Mythos is running short on. So Thor takes the opportunity to show Mythos the difference between who they are when it's all said and done. And it's kind of funny how this plays out, because Thor lands on his arm and Mythos is like, unhand me, and Thor's just like, gladly. So he tears off his arm and starts beating him to submission, and he breaks open his chest to deliver that final blow. Which in a way I guess was it showing us that Mythos just didn't have as much heart, cause now this ends Mythos and reduces him back to regular old M.O.T.H.O.S, crying about the loss of his perfect world. And as everything returns back to normal, Thor tells him that it never was M.O.T.H.O.'s world, cause he was just a god of broken mirrors. So M.O.T.H.O.S literally cusses Thor out, which more or less has Thor like, man, you got some kind of nerve to spit in the face of your executioner. So M.O.T.H.O.S is just like, bring it, show me the Allfather's justice. And from there, all we see is lightning, followed by Thor making his way back to Asgard, as he takes joy in knowing that his subjects are safer today than they were yesterday, which as the Allfather, this is his true reward. And with him getting back to Asgard, and M.O.T.H.O.S still crying, which lets us know that Thor didn't kill him. But with Thor returning to Asgard, he checks on Sif to see how she's doing, and she lets him know that her eyes are healing. Yggdrasil's restored, but Odin would have cut down M.O.T.H.O.S after what he did. So Thor tells Sif that he decided to give M.O.T.H.O.S a different kind of punishment by reaching into his mind with lightning and giving him a gift that he didn't know he needed, because M.O.T.H.O.S has been designed for many things, but never to question. So now perhaps M.O.T.H.O.S can see himself for who he is and find those personal answers much like Thor has, which once again shows us the difference between Thor and Odin. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support, and for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.